Hello, I'm the Angry Spork. Some amalgam combinations seem obvious, or at least unsurprising. Batman and Wolverine? They're consistently popular. Superman and Captain America, they've got the whole patriotic, good for good's sake vibe going. However, there are some combinations that are less obvious, and instead of 2 heroes as a base, we've got 3 today. That's like a savings of 50%! Or is it 33%? Jeez, I'm bad at math. Anyway, I'm taking issue with Speed Demon, where the spirit of vengeance and the fastest man alive are the same guy, skeleton, with a dash of rhyming demon added for good measure. I rather like this cover, showing the title character bursting forth from what looks like a graveyard. The digital fire seems a bit off, doesn't really age very well, but it's not too bad. However, it does seem odd here that Speedy seems to have one zipper going from his jacket down to his right leg and underneath a strap, then detouring about 90 degrees to his left. This just looks ridiculously complicated. If he still makes a pact with the devil in this one, I think we found the unforeseen consequence of doom. That zipper looks really inefficient and probably isn't great in times of extreme bathroom emergency. Story by Howard Mackey and James Felder, with art by Salvador LaRocca, Al Milgrom, and Kevin Tinsley. We opened a crime alley in Gotham City where Hal Jordan is lying in the trash, beaten and smoke rising from one of his hands, looking like it just got fricasseed. He's cursing the Owen Guardian Uatu for framing Hal for betraying the Star Brand Corps and killing Sinestro. Uatu admits to this, saying the frame-up was more of a distraction so he could kill the corpsmen one by one, and now Jordan is the last one standing, or lying in the trash. Now sit still and die like a good boy, for a new universe looms on the horizon. I'm thinking of calling it The New Heroes Reborn 52. All shirt collars will be the same design. Everyone's face will be covered in crosshatches. No feet will ever be shown, and everyone's backstory will get changed to be more like Dark Claws. What do you think? Do you love it or do you love it? That's when our main character zips onto the scene, standing between the drunk and his would-be assassin. Uatu's fine to rumble with his totally not a lightsaber, but Speed Demon just hits him with the flame breath, and Uatu's just now a charred skeleton. Sheesh, if they burn this quickly, Owen flesh must be made of, like, shredded paper. Speaking in rhyme, because Etrigan, he tells a grateful Jordan that the path he's walking leads to darkness. But the warning is more or less shrugged off. Got no time for bad poetry. James Tinian IV loses yet another reader.
Many murders have you committed. It must be admitted. To this you must not say fie.
Fie?
Well then, now you must die.
Then Hal gets flambéed. Who I guess could have been saved if he was instead offered pie. Or a Dungeons and Dragons die. Or toilet paper, 2-ply. Why, oh why, didn't he try? Was he simply too shy? Aardvark. Wait a minute. Considering that phi is an old, archaic English term to show disgust or disapproval with something, and people weren't exactly throwing that around in 1996, let alone today, and given Hal's quizzical context, it felt very much like a trap, as if Speed Demon was just going to off him anyway. We go to the Quinton Carnival, specifically a tent where 3 performers, Miss Miracle, Puck, and Blob, are telling Wally West to get the heck out of Dodge. It's not out of malice, since they consider each other family, but his uncle Blaze Allen has been dabbling in the supernatural ever since the death of his wife, and they don't want the kid getting caught up in it. Wally refuses their orders and walks out, seeing something headed into his uncle's trailer. He peeks inside, and among the various mystical items collected over years, he sees Speed Demon crouched within a circle of power, utter a rhyme, and revert to the form of Blaze Allen. Spotting his nephew and realizing he's been found out, Blaze explains that when he and Iris married, their first kiss as man and wife was interrupted by someone in a red cloak, taking her soul through a portal and vowing to return for his. Definitely something that did not happen at the rehearsal dinner. Iris's body withered, and Alan prayed and cursed for any chance to retrieve her soul, and it was given to him by Evil Incarnate, I guess meaning the guy in the stereotypical wizard hat, bonding part of his soul to the demon Etrigan. So, none of his friends and co-workers noticed? I mean, the guy in the pointy hat that looks like he's ready for a child's birthday party, I can see him blending into a crowd of carnival workers, but we see Blob, Miss Miracle, even Puck, he's short but he's there, and they're all talking to Wally like his uncle lost his mind.
Let's say that somehow only Blaze could see the cloaked guy take Iris's soul. How did everyone else not notice that a young woman suddenly mummified before their eyes? But okay, let's take it a bit further. Only Alan saw her wither away like that. She still died mere seconds after taking her vows. That at least has to look suspicious to everyone.
The demon Bond also endowed him with knowledge of that which lies beyond the ken of mortal man, specifically the Night Spectre, an entity that resides in the Sanctum of Lost Souls, at least when he's not possessing weak-willed souls to do his bidding. He intends to possess unfettered access to heaven, hell, and earth by collecting these souls of power, which only inhabit the most pure or most corrupt individuals, one of those captured souls being Iris.
I'm sure she's one of the pure ones. Okay, she did come home covered in what looked like blood, but she told me it was some spilled strawberry preserves, and to ignore anything that sounded like strained cries for help coming from her cellar.
Others, evidently, have tried using Etrigan's power against Night Spectre, and Blaze is no different, in a kind of race to find and gather the souls. Now there's one soul of power remaining, and Blaze's last shot at putting Iris's soul to rest. Granted, I'd have figured bring her back or something, but this is probably better and raises fewer questions. Alan senses Etrigan has discovered where to find the final soul and wants out, so stands in the circle to transform. I mean, really, you just let him in.
That was pretty quick. How did he find the soul, exactly? Does he transport to some netherworld library when he's not inhabiting Alan, and he was one page away from the answer before he went to save Jordan's bacon? Well, save then fry Jordan's bacon?
Wally is curious what the demon gets out of all this, and the poetic replies that Etrigan wasn't always as he is now, and would prefer it if history did not repeat itself for the sake of Night Spectre's delight in making others suffer. Across town, the Green Goblin, aka Harvey Osborn, is having a spat with two former criminal allies, Scarecrow and Silicon Man, who apparently are after his soul. He dispatches them with twisted glee and is then confronted by Mr. Nighty Speck. Give me a break, saying his full name over and over again gets annoying. Anyway, loath as he is to take human form, his minions haven't done squat, so decides to take Gobby's soul personally, as it's the final soul of power. And he'd have gotten away with it too if not for that meddling speed demon zipping Goblin a block away to kill himself.
If you're that fast, maybe it would have been a good idea to, go much, much further than that from the godlike being you've been fighting for so long. At least take it to another state, for crying out loud.
Osborn retaliates, at first with acid pellets, which seem rather effective, and asks why his soul is in such high demand. He gets knocked back and unmasked, and we see that he's got the classic Two-Face disfigurement, evidently the work of Logan, probably meaning Darklaw. Spectre pops up, and the two have their first one-on-one in all their years of long-distance conflict. An attempt to take Blaze Allen's soul is countered by busting open a water tower. I don't think tons is the proper measurement of liquid, but that's just me. You're not speaking haiku, Etrigan, and another syllable for gallons would have been fine. But El Agua was just a distraction for a powerful fire blast, and Etrigan is ready to finish his foe off, only to take several arrows that pin him to a nearby door. Even through his eyes, yeesh. They were fired by a character called Arrowcaster, whom Spectre tells to finish the job, but for whatever reason he stalls long enough to be incinerated. Freeing himself, the demon is ready to finish his enemy off. Again, until they both realize the Green Goblin has escaped. He's jumping across rooftops until stopped by the Spectre, who calls him Norman for some reason.
This looks like a mistake, since they called him Harvey earlier. though they can save it if, within the next 8 or so pages, they say that each half of his face has its own first name.
The demon also arrives, but perhaps a little too late, as his enemy invites him to follow him through his portal into his personal sanctum. Etrigan knows that's where the spec will be most powerful, but is urged to go through by Alan's voice within him. At the carnival, the wizard we briefly saw earlier approaches Wally, with knowledge to impart, specifically details that Blaze omitted in his earlier story. While the stuntman had some innate mystical power, he was an amateur in practice, and one night Spectre came to him looking for a human pawn in the soul race. When he refused, probably realizing he wasn't talking about a Mario Kart tournament, it sealed his and Iris's fate.
He didn't tell you that, did he, boy? That it was his own recklessness which cost him his bride.
Did it, though? If Iris is one of the souls of power, then she was going to be taken anyway. Revenge can be a decent enough motivator, but it doesn't seem like it adds anything here. Kind of a pointless twist, to be honest.
The man in the pointy hat continues that after the wedding, Blaze tried magics again, but this time got the wizard, who bonded him to Etrigan, and now thinks he's as good as dead. Wally clearly wants to help, so the sorcerer offers him a proposal. Meanwhile, in the Sanctum of Lost Souls, Etrigan has found the goblin, but seemed to have been separated from Alan. He frees captured souls when Spectre, apparently possessing Osborn's body, casts a spell petrifying them, and saying the demon's days as Jay Garrick are long over. Goblin Spectre holds Blaze captive, saying that the soul-bonding spell by Merlin has no effect in this realm, and now Etrigan is free to do as he pleases without human involvement. He taunts the demon, asking him what he expects to happen to all the souls in his sanctum if the Spectre dies.
Let me give you a hint. They will all perish with me.
Hey, that's not a hint. That's a straight-up spoiler. You have to post a warning before you bring those up, you jerk.
Spectre's confident that Flamehead won't risk Alan losing Iris because of a loss in his own previous life, even teasing a joke played by Merlin when Etrigan decides to surrender. Without rhyming, so he must be serious. Another speed demon crashes into the sanctum on a motorcycle, throws Green Knight Gobspec around, and is revealed to be Wally West. The page has a strange flow. You're apparently supposed to read the panels to the left of this black border, then go read from the top of the right half. It's really awkward and kind of messes up the flow of events. You end up reading panels out of order accidentally. Anyway, Blaze is furious, but is told that, according to Merlin, Night Spectre has his own human host, hoping to copy Speed Demon's advantages and turn Earth into his own personal hellscape. Wally keeps his bike's engine running, while Etrigan and Blaze go to the two petrified souls. One is Iris, and one is Jake Garrick, looking very Flash-like. Not merely a fan service name drop, Etrigan was indeed Garrick at one time. Wanting them to know peace, he uses his flame to set them free. Blaze reunites with his supernatural partner, and two speed demons make their way back to Gotham. At the carnival, Wally says he wanted to be something important to his uncle. Thanks to Merlin, now he can help during the most difficult challenge yet against their ethereal foe. Like a sidekick. Blaze gets some rest, lamenting ruining his nephew's life, when a thought occurs. Etrigan is the demon he's bonded with, so what demon bonded with Wally? The comic ends as the young man visits his parents' graves, and an image of the Night Spectre laughs in the background.
Ha! Dead people. They get me every time. So that was Speed Demon, and it had some interesting things going for it, but a lot of bewildering stumbles, if you ask me.
At most, Alan's job at the carnival is shown as a stuntman through a poster. It's not much, but okay, it's serviceable. There's use of the phrase words falling out of this character's mouth twice in a few pages, a tad redundant, but hardly earth-shattering. Though Alan's dialogue and exposition seemed very flowery, not really how I've ever heard people talk. Beyond the ken of mortal men, or that which held my beloved, feel like the wrong prose here. He's recalling a traumatic event to a younger relative, not in a college writing course trying to impress his teacher. A few pages felt very crowded with panels, in a way that felt unnecessary at some times and disruptive in others. I'll give it this much, it had some very interesting ideas, such as Blaze apparently needing a magic circle to transform, and the prospect of Night Spec bonded to Wally. I guess that explained why Goblin Face's dialogue was normalized, but not why he had information he shouldn't have, like who Etrigan used to be. The dialogue itself sounded like he was still possessed, but that's about it. And I guess Hal Jordan was on the darker end of the Souls of Power spectrum. I mean, that's really the only reason I can see killing the guy. Speed Demon isn't a spirit of vengeance or the devil's bounty hunter. He's clearly focused on saving Iris's soul. Maybe Jordan could have lived if he decided not to continue on his path of revenge, but Speed Demon's tactics were still pretty underhanded.
It's a fine enough read, didn't really thrill me, didn't hate it, but maybe they just thought since it was a one-time thing, they could leave a few plot holes and Mars here and there. Next, we see two clones mash together and get Spider-Boy.
Written by Carl Kessel, who also did some inking, with the rest of the art provided by Mark Waringo, Gary Martin, and Joe Rosas, the cover sees our title hero dodging one attack while a different character creeps up behind him.
Sneak hug!
It's a pretty good scene, showing some action and peril, and the hero's smile showing a level of confidence and excitement. Because you demanded it!
A once common slogan in comics that was always true, always accurate, and never ever a dubious claim.
This story begins at Project Cadmus, where Spider-Boy's contending with the creature from the cover, Bizarnage, who wants to kill the hero in order to be more like him.
You ain't going nowhere, Spider-Boy, except going to die.
You gotta have me crossed with that wacky castle guy, Biz.
That's ridiculous. You look nothing like Nathan Fillion.
When the creature attempts to absorb one of the nearby scientists, the teen offers himself up, even going so far to try opposite speak that Bizarro is known for, which is a little odd because even though it's only the second page, Bizarnage hasn't really been that consistent in that area. The villain goes for it, as SB's inner monologue suggests it was Johnny Storm about to be Bizarnagized. So why did the alien mention that Harper guy earlier? That's just needlessly confusing. Also, that Storm didn't deserve to die. Maimed, maybe. That's encouraging. Anyway, he breaks his promise not to move and fires his web gun through the opening of the enemy's body, so as to hit the button that opens the door to an energy containment cell, trapping the symbiote inside. Johnny, called Red for some reason, is checking his chest pockets, making sure his Johnny Stormtrooper clone is unharmed for their trip to the Phantom Negative Zone.
I get that there's some wordplay involved here because his last name is Storm, but Stormtrooper does not have a lot of friendly connotations associated with it, so it baffles me that anyone would use it in story, let alone that it'd make it into the comic.
Senator Ben Grimm accuses Dabney Donovan of releasing Bizarnage, as well as being behind other problems at the lab, but his alibi is pretty airtight. Reed Richards admits to being responsible in his inner monologue and ominous mugging for the camera, and it'll be too late before everyone else realizes it. Then Donovan's thought bubbles reveals he's been sneaking evil DNA into Reed's food, observing its effects and waiting to replace him as chief scientist. I'm going to need a flowchart for this, aren't I? That's when S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Sue Storm walks in with Dr. Connors, saying that another prisoner, King Lizard, escaped in Bizarnage's rampage, and may be halfway to New York by now. Connors blames himself, since his severed arm was combined with reptile DNA to create King Lizard, but Spider-Boy tells him he didn't have a hand in it. So to speak.
Remember, kids, clever wordplay can be hurtful. With great pun comes great responsibility.
Grimm figures they may as well get the Challengers of the Fantastic and half the army, but the young wallcrawler suggests that he go alone and keep Cadmus's secrecy intact. Sue agrees, giving him 2 hours before calling Bruce Wayne and getting the rest of S.H.I.E.L.D. involved. Oh, I guess you did not catch last week's episode. And on his way, the Iraq kid is held up by an argument between Doctors Palmer and Pym, while expositing about saving Shatter Starfire from her microverse, which is an adventure referenced in X-Patrol, which I reviewed a couple years back. He finally makes it to, I guess, the garage, where Doc Ock is dropping a Batman 66 reference. Fantastawagons, engines to power, turbines to speed.
I understood that reference.
eerily appropriate since Alfred Pennyworth voice actor, the late Ephraim Zimbalist Jr., did also play Octavius in the 90s Spider-Man cartoon.
After some banter about the Daily Bugle cashing in on the hero's popularity and assurance the kid will be ready for a blind date tonight, our hero takes off, musing he sometimes wishes Ock was an arch-nemesis. Subtle. But then admits he'd always been there since what happened to Uncle Gen, which is what he calls General Thunderbolt Ross, who managed to start a project to recreate the super soldier experiment. One of the scientists on the project, Peter Parker, suggested making a clone that could manipulate gravity, but halfway through the experiment, he died in an explosion caused by a mysterious power surge that wiped most of the data files, and woke Spider-Boy from containment like something bit him.
There's so many tongue-in-cheek references to then-normal Marvel and DC continuities, you might just need to go see a dentist after reading this book.
It's unknown whose cells were used in the clone's creation, but he was granted some super strength and the ability to change his personal gravity to cling to walls. It was suggested that perhaps Parker's inexperience caused the accident, though sabotage was still on the table. I'm sure Dabney Donovan here in the shadows isn't hinting at anything related to that at all. Ross took the boy under his wing, giving him the power and responsibility line passed from Super Soldier's parents, but was tragically killed by a burglar. Afterwards, so as not to be a kid who got ignored while other people got hurt, the clone made himself a costume and went on TV as Spider-Boy, learning that with great power does come great responsibility. And way too much fun.
Kind of an odd line, but I guess that's just the Superboy portion showing. But what I find really odd is the part about his not wanting to be ignored while other people are getting hurt. I'm not sure there's really a connection between him getting attention and other people being safe. Shouldn't attention be paid to, the people getting hurt?
He arrives at the other end of the Zoomway, evidently his home, where his manager Rex Leach and Betty Brant try to talk to him about action figure contracts and some missed calls from the JLA, Winona, and Conan.
Since this is comics, there's an equal shot that could mean the talk show host or the barbarian. Since this is the Amalgam universe, it could be a combination of the two.
SB makes his way to the roof, and Rex follows so he can talk to him about a Bugle headline alleging a romantic entanglement between the kid and the Insect Queen, but there's no time for that, as our hero launches himself into the air with the Web Slinger apparatus. Hoping to get a lead on King Lizard, he swings his way to the Daily Bugle, activating a matter transformer device that lets him don his secret identity of photographer Pete Ross, not only changing his clothes, but his hair color as well, which I think is a nice touch. He's stopped by reporter Tana Moon, who wants to expose a secret government base just outside the city, and he knows she's clearly talking about Cadmus. But in comes Jameson to show off the next day's dubious headline to complement Ross's webhead-centric pictures. Spider-Boy secretly weds Insect Queen. Word comes in from the docks of a giant lizard causing a ruckus, so Tana, Jack Ryder, and Ross are sent to get the story, though naturally Pete has already vanished. He's swinging across the city, singing his theme song, on his way to the pier where the scaly villain is terrorizing some workers. He doesn't get in much snark before he's backed up by members of New York's Special Crimes Unit, one of whom is apparently called Leech, though no idea if it's an intentional relation to Spider-Boy's manager, and the impact of their weapons makes it look like he's wearing a vest made of fire.
On the plus side, he'll never be at a loss when it's time to make some s'mores.
King begins overwhelming the officers, and Spidey grabs the monster's attention and leads them away. The team regroup and talk amongst themselves, including Thompson's Flash, that the metas might be working together. It's not very highly regarded. The reptile seems to be increasing in size, now rivaling some of the buildings he's smashing. It takes him a moment, but Spider-Boy remembers that his scaly foe had, according to Sue Storm, run through Hank Pym's particle accelerator, exposing him to Pym particles, thus causing the growth. He webs to his lair, digging through various machinery to find just the right tool for the job, Palmer's white dwarf prototype, which should revert the enemy's size from Kaiju to basic Sentai warrior. Unfortunately, he claws at the building, damaging the device and rupturing the containment field. Not knowing what'll happen upon critical mass, the Spider Kid rushes to take it where it won't harm anyone. King Lizard follows him to the roof, where the white dwarf unit has been loaded onto the web slinger, and summarily launched. I don't know what's going on in this panel here. Is one set of the lines movement and the other the device glowing? I know what's happened, it's just that the panel doesn't express it very clearly. Anyway, the device is essentially force-fed to King, causing him to shrink, not to whatever his typical size was, but smaller, smaller, ever smaller until he is, according to our hero, within the subatomic universe.
Well, here I am thinking that he was just gonna shrink to the point of non-existence, but instead he's just someone else's problem. And if he does stop shrinking, he might end up still larger than the inhabitants of this alternate space. If the people of that micro-universe didn't hate Spider-Boy before, they're definitely hating him now.
He does consider if King will land in Shatterstar Fire's old hometown, but considers the inhabitants such jerks that they'd probably deserve it. Our hero, ladies and gentlemen. SP is wondering how he'll explain to Palmer the loss of his one-of-a-kind device when he's met with Doc Ock. After what is likely a jab at the Spider-Man clone saga, Otto is there to introduce his young charge's blind date, the Insect Queen, aka Mary Jane Watson.
Face it, Spider. You just hit the jackpot.
And suddenly Spider-Boy wants to make Jonah's fabricated marriage headline a reality. Though Joe Quesada is just going to come along and demand it get annulled by Trigonostophiles or whoever. Anyway, this comic was alright. It had a lot of fun stuff in it, but I just felt like there was something missing.
I thought they did a great job of meshing the lore from both Spider-Man's and Superman's separate mythos. Heck, Pete Ross, the name of Clark Kent's old friend from Smallville, works wonderfully as an adoptive name of two people close to the main hero, much like how the name Ben Reilly was derived from Peter Parker's uncle and aunt, respectively. Even aesthetically, the two characters blend together, from the logo to the costume, though I'm sure that was helped by the fact that both Spidey and Superboy traditionally have red and blue color schemes. The dialogue was entertaining, there's a fun running gag repeating the word again, and a lot of nice references to various Marvel and DC trivia. The story worked to challenge Spider-Boy, showing that he's clever but not perfect. I'm just not entirely sure what keeps it from being more enjoyable to me. Maybe the feeling that it puts a lot of emphasis on setting up other in-universe storylines and characters that don't have a lot to do with what we're reading here. Other amalgams did the same thing, but perhaps this felt different for some reason. I also thought it was kind of a stretch to call Thunderbolt Ross Uncle Gen instead of, Uncle Thaddeus or Uncle Tad, but hey, they gotta rhyme it with Uncle Ben somehow. And why they changed the power and responsibility line on the cover when it's used regularly in the story is just odd.
I liked the art. I didn't find too much terribly wrong with the story, so maybe it just didn't click for me. Good thing there are still plenty more Amalgam comics on the way. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.